uh, uh, making noises because I can't see the screen yet, and I want to make sure that this is actually on. You know, YouTube used to be better. Maybe now with Wojcicki out of the picture, YouTube can finally be what it was meant to be again. Who knows? Um, we are 25 seconds into this, allegedly, but I can't see the actual video stream, so I can't verify jack fucking shit. There we go. Thank you, YouTube, for doing your fucking job. This is an episode of this show where we will be saying words about things. The title of it is Jason and Jeremiah: Optimism versus Pessimism versus Facts versus Logic. And the general vibe is I'm a pessimist, Jason is not. And we sort of had some exchanges in my Discord about it, but I feel like it'll make a better stream than it would be a discussion in text. So I offered that, and basically, I'm going to be asking questions. I might argue somewhat, and I guaranteeably will argue with some of these points because I already know some of them that I firmly disagree with. But I'm mainly going to give Jason an opportunity to make the best case forward about this. So before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you into anarchy, libertarianism, etc., and what you do now.
Okay, well, I spent the majority of my life as a pretty hardline statist. The majority of my life, I spent 9 years active duty in the military. When I got out, I went straight into a headhunting organization and was recruited as a somebody working frontline stuff over in Afghanistan and Iraq. So I went back over there for another 3 years. Spent a total of about 5.5 years in combat zones doing work. It really changed the way you look at the world, and I didn't even understand about it until I came home and had a nervous breakdown, PTSD. So after that, I kind of got retired, and I started reading a lot. I got really interested in what our rights were, Constitution, whatnot. After I had an injury and couldn't do anything, so I laid around reading books. And that's where I started down the rabbit hole, man. I mean, the whole idea of what social structure is, what it's about, the fundamentals of this, what really makes it tick. Why does it work like it does? So, I started to read a lot of the philosophers and try to get my head around these things. And brother, these are some deep concepts. We all know that. Does wonders to be able to talk people through it, and it helps you really understand these things. So now I'm a tired agorist, I guess. I took my entire life and I devoted it to being able to grow my own food and be dependent from the grid and have my own water, and it's my life.
All right.
And that's where we are now.
So, all right. The subject of optimism versus pessimism generally came up because I'm going to try to steelman your position here because I don't want to be a fucking cock about
sure.
this. So the primary thing is you believe that because of not only technological but social progress, that there is enough of an upswell of good and truth and reason and etc. that they will that the forces of good will overwhelm the forces of evil, that the forces of honesty and decency will generally prevail because people are, quote, sick of this shit. If I remember, those were your words there.
Well, yeah, that's to an extent. Okay, so the dynamic that I see that I like to point at is the innate troll, I think is what I'd like to call this. So everybody has a little troll in them, right? And if they see a lie, they like to call that shit out. Everybody likes doing this kind of stuff. If you know the truth and you know somebody's lying, you're going to most people will call it out, especially on the internet where you get to hide behind your keyboard. It's a very easy thing to do to be able to call people out like that. So it creates a different social dynamic because this younger generation that's coming is way more in this than my generation was. So the dynamics, the effects that this is going to have on the physical society will be deep. It's going to change things. It will change power structures. This is going to change how we structure our society and how we enforce our rules. I'm not saying that this is, the good guys are prevailing. What I'm saying is that it's going to have to change to be able to adapt to how we behave. Generations that's coming next, my kids, do not act the way that I do. And I see how they chastise each other online, and it's brutal. And it absolutely will affect social behavior. There's no question about that. So what my point is that the power structures that we have created that are 600 and 700 years old, because they're based on the written word and how we manipulate that written word, and it's been going on for centuries, that's all going to have to change. It'll have to, because the reason that it changes in my mind, the way that I think of it, is the speed at which information is transferred. The faster ideas can get from one man to a group, the more effect it has. The harder it is to do an end play on a dynamic that's already in progression. It's much easier if it's a written word because it takes longer. But when it's instantaneous messages across the internet, wildfires get started that you can't even begin to get your grip on. And I'm looking at it myself thinking, I don't see how you can possibly stop some of these dynamics. That doesn't mean they can't be stopped. That doesn't mean there's not people smarter than me that can figure out how to stymie that shit. But what I'm saying is that they're going to have to change their power structures to be able to keep up with the dynamics that are created by a new form of communication.
So the first thing that I could say that I think pokes some holes in this. I interact with a whole lot of people, and I'm going to use like 2 examples of some figures here. I interact with a lot of people who support Jimmy Dore. I don't. I think Jimmy Dore is a shit sack in a lot of ways. And one of the ways in which Jimmy Dore is a shit sack is he will literally use any source that seems to confirm what he believes. And it doesn't matter to him whether or not that source is true. He won't even fact check it. He won't even make sure that that source is like a real source that is not like making shit up as a matter of course. Now, the reason that like that matters is he's got a gigantic audience. Absolutely fuck huge. And it gets bigger by the day. And the general vibe of his messaging is, I'm a comedian, I can say whatever I want. It doesn't matter whether or not it's true. It just matters that, like, I'm saying what they won't. And so, as an example, he posted an entire story. He not only live streamed it, but then he posted a stream highlights of an entire story. And his source was The People's Voice. Now, The People's Voice is a rag run by an ex-MTV executive named Sean Adel-Tabatabai. And this guy started organizations like Your Newswire, which then became News Punch, which then became The People's Voice. And like all of these sites are jack-off bullshit that isn't true. But not only them, so many other people are just willing to share shit from those sites. And one of the things that they do that's really fucked up is they literally say fact-checked in their, like, article headline. So it gives people a false sense of fucking security about that shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true. It doesn't need to be true. Um, but like, because the article confirms somebody's bias, they'll take a screenshot, and it's so easy. They'll take a
Yeah.
screenshot of the article headline, share it around, and that becomes truth. That becomes what so many people believe to be truth. Um, so there's one example. And then,
That's the Himmler effect, isn't it? Repeat a lie enough and it becomes the truth.
exactly. And then a second example I can give is Matt Wallace 888 on Twitter. Millions of followers, directly supported by Elon Musk and so many other people. Lies. So much. So often. So reliably just lies. And oftentimes he will lie and then directly promote a product so that people are like, oh, the apocalypse is coming. We saw some fucking flight traffic that we never bothered to understand, and so there must be World War III happening right now. Buy the survival food and gold and shit. And it hasn't happened yet. But Matt Wallace 888 gets a whole shit ton of tweets, or like, George Soros gay lovers, those are bodyguards, you piece of shit. Fucking like Obama, secret lizard, we got proof, and on his Rumble it'll be like a video showing a slight camera glitch or some shit. It's dumb. It's all fucking lies. But Matt Wallace 888 gets supported by Elon Musk, and then by this support, his shit just proliferates quick to tens of thousands of people within every hour. Just another lie from Matt Wallace, another lie from the People's Voice, articles by which are also supported by people like Elon Musk, because they'll also share those bullshit tweet headlines. So my point is, how do you reconcile the absolute battering ram of people who will just believe bullshit, as like opposed to this alleged shift in the power structure? If you ask me, based on the information I have, the modern paradigm as we have it is basically just a way to reify the existing power structures, strengthen them, embolden them, make it easier to access them. I don't see a way around that. Help me navigate this. Take as long as you need.
I'm trying to get my head around exactly the question here, because when I'm talking about this social changes and things that I'm talking about very protracted timelines. This is nothing that's happening immediately.
Okay.
You understand? Currently, we're waiting for the boomers that are mostly in charge. They still are.
Yeah.
Most of our government is made up of boomers. That's, the boomers and Gen X, my generation, are the vast majority of the Senate and Congress right now. Is that right? And most elected officials in the United States.
They call it a
I think we make up the
gerontocracy.
largest. Yeah, it's we're in charge. And like I was saying before we started this, the overwhelming views of my generation were locked in when we were roughly 25 years old.
Yeah.
That's just not going to change. I'm sorry. And humans become more conservative as they get older. So, even if a small percentage of us just don't, we ride the wave of the vast majority. So, whatever the 80% says is what the rules are. That's just how that fucking works. So when I'm talking about how these new forms of communications are going to fundamentally change our social dynamics, it's going to happen in the next probably 3 generations. I'm expecting big changes to happen in my kids' generations. They don't act like us. It's different. The way they treat their friends is different. They're intolerant of bullshit on a level I can't even. They waste no time whatsoever in hurting feelings. I mean, zero. You say it, buddy, you're going to eat it. That's not the dynamic we currently see in the power structures that we have. They just don't do that. So I think as that becomes more prominent as they become older, the power structure is going to have to adapt to that. That in the same way that the power structures of the boomers had to adapt to the idea that my generation is simply going to legalize marijuana and fuck you. That's just what's going to happen. Well, I think that my kids are going to bring into, or not my kids specifically, you understand,
Yeah.
this the generation, what is it Gen Z and Gen Alpha
Yeah.
that's behind the millennials? They're it's a very different dynamic in the social structure. My children are so conservative compared to the way that I was, and I watch them and I'm shocked by it. And for a long time I thought, well, it's just my kids, you know. I don't think it is. Their friends are the same way. They're so focused on what needs to be done. And I'm just like, oh, it blows me away because, you know, when I was 20 years old, I sure as fuck wasn't worried about much. Getting high and being wild, that's what I was worried about, you know. Can I get out the fucking window tonight without mom hearing me? You know, these were my big worries. My daughter's over here lining up her next 10-year plan, and it just blows me away. We have a different generation coming, and I think that it's...
So real quick,
I don't know.
Do you mind, just for the sake of the record, defining what you mean by conservative and non-conservative?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question. I use that in probably a bad way. When I think of the conservative ideologies, I think of, you know, how my kids put aside going and doing fun when money comes into the picture. I've grown up so loose with it my whole life. You know, I just didn't really care. It was about the moment. Didn't really give a shit until I got older. My kids have my mentality now, and they're 19, and I see it in their friends. This, you know, I have to take care of my car. I have to take care of my bills. I have to do all of these things. We had a party, but I don't want to do that anymore because it was too much mess. So if we're doing that someplace else. All of this very adult behavior. Yeah, I see them making their baby steps and learning, but their reactions are not the kind of reactions that I had when I was a kid, is what I'm saying. It's starkly different from what I saw in myself and my friends in my generation and Generation X.
So your contention, I guess a better word to use than conservative for the purposes of this discussion is proactive.
Yeah, I think they're going to change things on a fundamental level, yeah.
All right, well, so here's the thing. I can see where you're coming from in that regard. They certainly, you know, there's certainly a trend toward being more future cognizant in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Partially because boomers did fucked the dog about a lot of this shit and, like, significantly, like... Well, I could say screwed the pooch, but that's honestly a little bit too nice sounding. Fucked the dog.
Gen X did not help, so...
Yeah. And Gen X are the new boomers. I could go on for fucking 800 hours about that.
Not gonna argue with that.
Like, there's a channel on YouTube called Funky Frogbait. People should subscribe. And that channel, like, she routinely goes over, like, the most recent trends. And one of her most recent videos is a video going over the Gen X's sort of "we're gonna rise up" memes that they've been doing, and it's so fucking cringe. Like, yeah, and it's like, Gen Z, you done you soft. We were drinking from the hose uphill both ways in the snow, and like, fucking, they're the new people saying that. You know, we're the last hard generation, and then they're the most snowflakey about any little thing that they might perceive as an attack. I know people like this in various circles. If you're listening to this by any chance, Tommy, hi, and also go fuck yourself. but the general vibe is that like you know those generations did a significant amount of damage.
Yeah.
Millennials in a lot of ways didn't help, but at least sort of there's a movement in the proper direction and trying to be sustainable, trying to live minimally, trying
Sure.
to move, so but the thing is all
I
of
mean, you're
them.
pointing at exactly the same things that I'm highlighting
Right,
here.
right.
Is that the disparities in generations? The more, and I think the more trying our society becomes, the larger those disparities become from one generation to the next.
Right, but like so then there comes the obverse though. Because this immediate quick fire reaction is a real good way for people to get hurt. And
Oh yeah, sure, yeah,
like an example I could mention is the situation involving Dream, where it seems like a whole bunch of actual just bullshit came out, and he then had to respond to that. And that's just one person I could mention. There was something that came up regarding pyrocynical, if I recall correctly. There was something that came up about fucking this Minecraft YouTuber. I don't even remember. But like the general thing is that there's all this stuff that routinely comes up where people will then have to fucking like quite that was his name, where people will then have to explain like how like all these allegations are wrong, and these allegations will
yeah,
spread like fucking wildfire before anybody has a chance to say anything. And if you don't have a
yes,
sizable platform already, you might just be fucked. If you don't have a
yeah,
loyal audience, and you're a smaller creator, you might just be fucked. Like I personally witnessed some Gen Z action, maybe like a few years ago, where this kid was in this community of alleged predator hunters, and like those predator hunters were all Gen Z. And you really shouldn't do that if you're a kid, by the way. You should stay out of predator hunting
yeah,
if you're a minor. But there were
yeah.
plenty of people in these communities who were. And this kid had the audacity to ask some questions because he was 14 and he was asking questions about like gender identity and stuff. And because he didn't immediately accept literally everything they said, um, they jumped down his fucking neck. And an account that was supposed to be against zoophilia, ran by a chick named Dan, um, like was used to send thousands of people after him, accusing him of being a xenophobe and a transphobe. And the xenophobe part coming out because they lied and misused the term, claiming that he was xenophobic because he didn't approve immediately of xenogenders. That's not what xenophobia is to anybody out there who has their cock in their ear. So, like, they sent
Oh,
thousands of people after this kid who thought he was this racist, transphobic, bigoted, homophobic, worst kid ever. And he's 14. And most of these people weren't even informed of that fact. They weren't informed of the fact that they were beating up a minor and making him want to, like, off himself. And this is common. It's common. And then when I defended him,
mhm.
these same people, not only that anti-zoophile account, but this other account and quite a few others, tried to lie and call me a groomer over it. Because I was defending this kid that they wanted to lie about. And when it came out that they had no proof of it, certain members of their community were like, "Oh shit, we fucked up. We shouldn't be supporting this person because they're a liar." Um, but at the same time, the damage had already been done in a lot of ways. I had already been blocked by a significant amount of people. I already had a significant amount of people, um, you know, like sort of written me off, talking shit, bunch of shit like that. And like most of these people were in that generation. They have no problem lynching somebody publicly because of something that was told to them, regardless of whether or not they actually have any proof. And I'm
Hmm.
not saying all of them.
And these are Gen Z kids, right? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying? Most of them? Yeah.
And I'm not
Yep.
saying all of them. I know a lot of great people in that generation.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are like on my side about that very situation, but like
I'm sure.
let's be clear. There's a significant amount of problem with just saying that this generation, because they're so brutal and quick to criticize and antagonize, that that's somehow an automatic net good in terms of moving the culture forward, because that's how you get McCarthyism. That's how you get witch hunting. Is you get like a group of people who are very quick to label, destroy, and fuck up another
Okay,
person's life.
I
Take as
have a
long as
counter
you
to
need.
that. All right. So the dynamic that you're talking about is the front page accusation with the back page retraction, and you're not getting a back page retraction because it's not covered, right? Yep. So I get what you're saying. I see where you're coming from, but in social media, and the dynamic is definitely there. Um, this fallout's going to be on the front page. So everybody who stuck their foot in their mouth in this group that you're talking about is going to be called out by the other people in the same group. That shit's going to get slung all over the place. There is not going to be any hiding from what you said. None. Most you can do is block. Now, you can run off into your little echo chamber if you want to with the rest of your racist assholes, but that's not going to change the dynamic of the majority of the people. And let's also be clear that in social media, it's not uncommon for only about 20% of the people, and usually less than that, to actually participate in the conversations that are being read by 100. So that dynamic is totally new to our society. I mean, this has never been seen before, where you can have a public forum like this, where these people have literally just crucified themselves in front of everybody, and everybody saw it. That's gonna change the way we structure our society. Our power dynamics won't be able to survive that. Not the way that they're structured right now, because you won't be able to hide. That time is coming. It's not completely upon us yet, but I can see those dynamics in play. A good example is, okay, 2 days ago, a friend of mine just bought a car. This girl's had a hard time. She finally got herself a decent car to take care of her child with. She's driving down the road, and some guy with a truck had a board on it that fell off. He was carrying trash and stuff, and it hit her car and did some damage. And she managed to flag him down, and told him about it. And he said, "Yeah, I know shit's falling off the truck. I don't care. It's not my problem." And she said, "Well, I tell you what, I'm on the phone with the police right now," and he ran off. And she wasn't able to get his license plate number. She only got a couple of letters off of it, and but she remembered there was a 1776 emblem sticker in the back window. So we got on local Facebook and put out a shout out at some local area groups here. And I know it's a small county, small population, all that shit, but it wasn't a couple of hours, and somebody says, "Yeah, I know where that guy lives, right across from the laundromat down here on this street in Lewisburg." Well, she's getting her car fixed. This is something that could not have been done with a newspaper. This would have taken weeks.
And nobody would have given a shit.
Right, that's exactly right. But this happened in just a couple of hours. These are powerful, powerful social dynamic changes that our social structures have never experienced this kind of information flow. It's going to change things. It's going to be really difficult to be a lying shitbag who runs off and hides from it. You're not going to be able to hide from it.
Well, maybe, because what I know for a fact is I've watched a lot of people scamper off into the shadows, change their username, and come back. And I also know that, like, in the cases I mentioned earlier, like, fucking Dan is now doing collabs with clothing lines because she does, in my opinion, extremely subpar art. And I would have said this before I hated her, but like extremely subpar. It is not remotely even good. But like, generally speaking, like, this kind of person seems to get away with it, because they'll find a group of people who's still willing to affirm them as long as they get in on the social acceptance. Like, to move it to a more widely known, less niche subject, we got Amber Heard. still got roles. In fact, Johnny Depp didn't get roles while she did. Um, Johnny Depp got the tip of his finger cut off, and she gets to be an Aquaman. You know, it's like, it's one of those things where, like, Amber Heard gets to get away with it, and, like, even though everybody knows that what she said was bullshit and saw her in the weirdly televised court case, like, she still gets to get away with it. Donald Trump got convicted of like 34 felonies, was it? And he gets to get away with it. Hunter Biden ain't gonna see a lick of jail. All these powerful people. And so when it comes down to it, we could release the Epstein flight logs tomorrow. Gen Z ain't gonna be hiring John Wick. You know, like, there's not.
No, they're not in control. They have no control whatsoever. Gen Z, Gen Alpha are not in control at all.
Right.
But they will be in 50 years.
I mean...
And the power structures that are going to come up under these kids are not going to be these. They're going to be radically different. I'm telling you, my kids are nothing like us, is what I'm saying. I think it's going to be a radical change. I really do. And that's not being an optimist. I just think that this, I don't know, I think this culmination, this is one of the things that we talked about earlier. So I look to the printing press and how it took about a 200-year cycle to really knock the knees out from under. I think it was the catalyst to kill divine right. I don't think the infantry revolution was the real thing that it's cracked up to be. I think it really was people reading philosophy and talking about it. And between 1440, when the printing press came out, and when Charles I was executed, I think sometime in the mid-1650s, is that right? And was truly the death of divine right. I mean, that was the end of it. 200 years, we're right on mark. We're coming right into it. Telecommunications is almost 200 years old right now.
Well, so my response to that would be, generally speaking, I think the printing press, fine, right?
Yeah.
Telephone, fine. Radio, fine. TV, fine. But now we're getting into some real shaky territory. And the reason we're getting into real shaky territory is, firstly, the internet itself is a weapon used by the elites. The active fence kind of thing, the fact that the fact checkers that check social media facts are literally bought and paid for by the same institutions, the same billionaires that they're supposed to be holding accountable. It's the same, like, the FDA is like, you know, a revolving door of regulators and the actual people who run the businesses they're supposed to be regulating. So it's shit like that, right? And then you bring it down to the most recent bullshit. AI scares the living fuck out of me. It is evil. It is pure evil. Like, I understand certain use cases for it that I don't hate as much. Like, and I always bring this one up because this one I like in its present use case. I like this use of AI in its present use case, where instead of using pesticides, an AI monitored tractor rig will go around and use laser beams to shoot weeds off, like while they're sprouting. That's fucking awesome, because it means you won't need to have fucking chemicals on your food. But, and here's my obverse, here's where I get to sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist, pessimist asshole. So, brace. Those of you who have been watching this channel for a while now, like, share, and subscribe if you know what I'm saying. Like, you know what I'm about to say. That same algorithm...
That's a weapon.
That can, like, you know, zap weeds off, can also be used with other lasers to treat humans like the same weeds.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
And so, like, go ahead.
The technology just always opens the door to, you know, more easily killing people. I mean, there's just, you know,
right.
It's not unusual for technologies to develop that can be easily abused. That's just a given.
Right.
We know.
So, but like
Um,
the AI
but
itself isn't just for that. It's like the model can be used to literally fabricate truth now. And when the fact
sure,
checkers
yeah.
are co-opted by the same people who might want to fabricate that truth, and when they get to say no, the video that like we actually know is AI edited is the real video, when they get to say that no, in fact, the video that CNN put out of Joe Rogan being slightly greener, to make him look more sickly is the real video.
Hmm.
Imagine what they're gonna do with AI.
Okay, well,
Go ahead,
let me
as
say
long
this
as you
about
need.
that. So technology and how it advances and how it changes things. Um, let's look at something like, okay, here. How about the sugar conspiracy? I mean, that kicked off in the 1950s. It's pretty much common knowledge now that we were lied to about how sugar works, and almost most people you talk to say, "Hey, you know anything about that sugar conspiracy?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I've heard about that shit." You know, it's a it's come to almost be common knowledge. Um, that was 70 years ago. It took us 70 years to figure that shit out. Now, the social media kicked off and really became full swing thing around 2004, 2005, I guess. Not Facebook, but MySpace and all that shit. So we're 20 years or so into this heavy duty social media thing, and the fact checker farce popped up and lived how long? How long did that last before it was common knowledge that it was bullshit? Maybe 4 or 5 years.
Well, but it's not common knowledge.
It
Like a
is.
significant amount of people will believe those fact checks, especially if it's through some organization like Community Notes. They
You,
love the
you
fact
think you think
checkers.
people you think a majority of Gen Z and Gen Alpha believe the fact that fact checkers are real?
Yes.
I do not believe that. I don't believe that at all. I'd have a hard time swallowing that one, man.
Well, let me.
That's not what I see at all.
Well, because okay, I've spoken to a significant amount of both. And what I'll tell you is if they Google something and Google gives them result, they will almost certainly pick that result. And like in a funny sort of backfiring way, AI has changed that slightly, and worsened it in their in that kind of way, because now that Google is including AI results at the top of the page, the AI is
Yep.
saying some incredibly fucked shit, like maybe rocks would be a good pizza topping and eating a few of them a day is necessary to preventing heart disease or some shit like that. You know,
Yeah.
so now they're being like, well, maybe I won't believe the first result that came up, but when it comes to it, they could just scroll down a little bit and get like very similar results to that first result, and they'll probably believe enough of it after enough confirmation kicks in. So even if they don't believe the AI result, they'll probably believe basically what the AI result was going to tell them. Um,
Well,
and
that's okay. I see what you're saying, and I understand that dynamic. But I thought we were talking about fact checkers, like people on Facebook coming in and trying to say, "Hey, this is misinformation." Because I'm telling you, I don't think anybody believes those people anymore.
well, Gen Z and Alpha is much more susceptible because they're not part of the generation that's like currently anti-vax in quite a bit of ways, or trying to like still cling to the vestiges of their social media clout. Like Daily Wire is the biggest organization on Facebook, the biggest news organization on Facebook. It's bigger than CNN, it's bigger than Fox,
Hmm.
it's bigger than NBC. Daily Wire. And Daily Wire is a genocidal, lying, fascist organization.
Hmm.
So that should tell you everything about the average person believing these fact checks. And it's the same thing on Twitter now, because like a lot of the leftists left because Elon Musk is a fascist and they didn't want to constantly be treated like shit by people who agree with him. So a significant amount of people have just vacated to other platforms like Blue Sky or Threads or TikTok or something like that. And those people, sure, might be more critical of the kinds of things that the billionaires are telling them through these fact checks. But, like, to a general degree, I've noticed a compliance with it and an almost rigid mockery of people who don't conform to those particular mentalities and moduses. Like Gen Z was very quick to like jump on the fuck Jeremiah train when I was going against Ukraine or criticizing Fauci or not wearing a mask or something like that. They were
Hmm.
very,
Sure.
very on board for the
Mhm.
vast majority of this shit. So, what I can tell you is that from my experience, that's the case. From my experience, they're not necessarily, I'm not trying to frame them as gullible, but a significant amount of them, not all of them, some of them are very, very wise to this shit, and I'm not saying all of them, but enough of them are, like, not, that it creates very bad conditions for truth statements to prevail and for, like, the lie
Hmm.
statements to be significantly rebuffed.
Okay. Yes, and I totally agree with that. I'm not gonna. There's no argument against me from that. Um, but I would like to point out that you know, let's see. I guess it's the millennials
Mm-hmm.
are the last generation to not have grown up from adolescence in the public forum. Uh, this is different. Um, Ridicule is instantaneous, even though it's protracted in some ways. For example, like what you just pointed out about the vaccines, I caught a lot of shit about that too. I wouldn't wear the mask. I wouldn't take the jab. Um, nope, not doing any of it. Um, people are eating those words now. it, it, things take time, and these dynamics that I'm talking about, that I feel really confident that this is changing, and I see it. Um, I would love to see the demographics for the Daily Wire.
Oh,
I
they're
have a hard
mostly
time
X and
believing.
boomers, guaranteed.
I'm sorry.
They're mostly X and boomers, guaranteed.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of my point, is that the the Gen Z and Gen Alpha they're changing where they're getting their information from. The flow of information between them is faster. It's not the same. It's not the same thing that we grew up with. This is very different. This is going to fundamentally change things because it's going to change them, and they're going to change the environment. That's the evolution of society, and this one is a big step. I think this is going to be radical. It kind of scares me, honestly, because usually whenever there's a big disparity between one generation and the next, the it's violent. So I don't expect. I hope it goes slowly, but I don't think it will. I think sometime within the next 50 to 70 years, we're going to see very massive upheaval. I don't think I'll be alive for it, but I think we're due for a massive social change that will be it'll be catalyst of what we're this machine we've made, this form of communication that is instantaneous, where one voice can be heard by millions instantly, and ridicule can be instant, and the people that are listening to the Daily Wire are going to die, and the Daily Wire will die with them. And these new forms of communication, more transparent, I would hope, will become more prevalent, because people will just call lies out instantly. You just can't propagate them. I mean, you could say the lie and it might live a week and it might get a following, but not for long. It's going to get exposed fairly quickly, and everybody who went along with that is going to catch some fucking ridicule. And the further along we go, the faster this seems to be happening.
Well, so here's some counters. Um, First thing is, like, the fact that they're not getting their news from Daily Wire does not mean that they're getting their news from an awesome source. Destiny
Agreed.
is particularly popular with Gen Z and Alpha, and Destiny is a genocidal, bloodthirsty, evil son of a bitch. Um, And Hassan Piker, he can lie a shit ton, and his primarily Z and Alpha audience is going to eat that shit up. Nick Fuentes has a primarily very young audience. He targets the youth very specifically, and that's why he's totally fine working with people like Sneeko, who also targets the youth. And those are just like some thinkers that have like relatively high levels of pull. But then when you get down to people who don't have political pull, but definitely who have social pull, for instance, Mr. Beast. He is a sack of shit. He is an
Oh yeah, I've
abusive,
seen the teardowns. Yeah.
yeah, he is an abusive, evil, fucking manipulative. But I said this for years without any of this recent shit. And because I was saying it because of things that make sense to me, that he was just doing the same standard, like, performative charity that, like, so many existing philanthropists that are criticized for that kind of performative charity do. Um, I said that he's no different from, Bill Gates and shit, and expect there to be like an Epstein like situation where there's a bunch of corruption. And now, what do you know? There's an Epstein like situation with a bunch of corruption coming out. And so when it comes down to it, even something as quote unquote innocent as let me see how many like Orbeez I can shove down my cock shaft, like, fucking that sort of content, even that has an evil underlayment. And
Okay.
it's go.
How long did Mr. Beast live? How long has he been around? How many
He's
years?
I mean, he's been growing in popularity for like um the better part of a decade and been
Okay.
spiking in popularity for like 5 years now. He surpassed PewDiePie like 4 years ago,
Hmm.
and he's
And
only
and
been
now he's
he's
and
massive.
now he's yeah, and now he's getting slammed. Now the real shit's coming out, isn't it? That'll continue to grow. I feel pretty confident that more and more people are going to see that and understand it. Um, and Bill Cosby was raping people for 40 fucking years.
Mhm.
That's my point here. Things are changing. This ability to maintain a charade is just, it's going to die. It's going to die because it was difficult for the women that and people who knew what Cosby was up to get their word out because the written word in television had a lock on that shit. But ain't nobody got a lock on the internet. This shit's free flowing and it's very, very difficult to control. I mean, what we're doing right now is exactly the dynamic that I'm talking about. This is it. You can't stop this. You could turn the internet off, but I'm afraid that there would be a very violent reaction from the populace if you tried to pull that shit. Uh, I think that what we're seeing is it's the kind of rapid change that is going to force the structures of our society to change. They're not going to have a choice. Shit moves so fast that some of these simple charades that the state has used, and I shouldn't say the state, let's just call it whoever the fuck is in charge. I don't know who the
The
fuck's in
state's
charge,
fine.
man.
I like the state is the banks, the corporation, the
Sure.
politicians, the cops, the troops. It's
So,
all the state.
yeah. So, simple short term tricks that have worked in the past are just not going to work anymore. You can't maintain them long enough. That's my point. That's the problem that the current power structures are running into. The tactics that were formerly used are beginning to fail because people aren't just going. They're just not going to participate in that anymore because they know.
Well, but see, here's the thing. So you say things are moving fast, and I agree. But the fact that things are moving fast does not mean that the lies and abuse are not moving equally as fast, if not faster. Because
Oh yeah,
this.
no, I didn't say that they weren't. That's
Right,
not my
right.
argument at all.
Well, so how do you reconcile that?
Well, because the people that are committing the acts are being found more quickly. It's just the exposure. People are exposed more quickly now than ever before in history. That's my point. This is what's going to change things.
Well,
If the constant risk of exposure is there, and it is now, I mean it makes it harder to do anything abusive without being put on blast immediately. Um, You, you can try to maintain the charade for as long as you want, but there's so many people able to just get on there and say, hey, y'all, that's a charade, that it becomes almost impossible to maintain it for any length of time that would make it effective on the kind of scale that, states operate on.
So the thing that I can say in that regard, um, I disagree, and the reason I disagree is
Sure.
because Mr. Beast, for instance, uh, if simply the stuff that came up with James Weddle, I think is his name, um, was brought to light, he would have had a bad day, but he wouldn't have necessarily had the full cancellation because it would have just been one thing and he could have apologized for that one thing and moved on. The thing is, he's been, you know, coddling abusive people for years. He's been doing that shit for a long time. And if it wasn't for the absolute barrage of shit coming out about him at this point, now that it's okay to say it, um, it wouldn't be happening. There wouldn't be a cancellation. And I know that from experience because, for instance, Jocelyn Glaybach, who does not like to have her name used because she's the one who put it out there, still got to get away with lying about me, saying that that I was the source of her hate for days. This is the redheaded libertarian on Twitter. She got not only to get away with that, and to get away with, fucking sending her mob after me and consistently like lying about me and the situation, claiming I doxed her for using a name that she herself used on an article that she wrote and released to her own public audience. Like, sending that sort of lie out there are still people who don't like me for that situation. There are still people who, like, and she herself, even after being a manifest ghoulish liar, who was not only justifying what Trump was doing, but absolutely worshiping at his fucking altar, for years. And everything he did was fucking solid gold. It didn't matter whether or not she was, like, honest. She not only got to get away with that, but she then became the media woman, working officially with Tim Pool, who was a similar type of grifting, lying, evil piece of shit. Along with people like Clint Russell, who is also a grifting, lying piece of shit. And so, like, all of these people who are part of this ecosystem of grifting, lying pieces of shit, they have each other's backs, and their audience will provide redundancies for their dishonesty. And so it doesn't matter if what they're saying is manifestly false and easily provably so, they'll block you if you challenge them. And so if you scroll in their comments and you're new to their content, you'll just see nothing but confirmation bias. You'll be like, you'd be tempted to yasker old Jocelyn as well. So
that's exactly the echo chamber I was just talking about, that society is going to push people into, that try to act like that. You're going to get disconnected from society in the coming age. In the society that's coming, you'd just be divorced from it. If you're going to act like that, you don't get to play ball. That's the dynamic I think is coming. So that dynamic that you're seeing there in that Libertarian Party, the mass of society would just tell those people to fuck off. And any hope of that party being a political force of any kind would just die with that behavior.
But Tim isn't losing subscribers, though. And
now, he's not losing subscribers in this generation. This is what I'm talking about. He's lost Gen Z and Gen Alpha. He'll never get them. They're not going to go.
Maybe. I'll grant.
These are the dynamics that I see. This is what I actually see my kids doing, what I see their friends talk about. It's a change. It's a massive change in the way that they see things. And I think it's all stemming from this rapid ability to communicate, instantaneous communications, it's just changing how we behave. Has it changed the Libertarian Party as we know it today? No, and it's not going to. Because, like I said, the millennials and Gen X and the boomers are already set in their ways. But Gen Z and Gen Alpha are coming. And those structures are toast. If you ignore people and block them out, you're going to get stuck into an echo chamber. You will. They're going to call you out on it. They're going to ridicule you, and you're going to be shitty and block them. Well, then guess what? You don't get to participate with the rest of society. And the rest of society is behaving like this. So you can either behave like this, or you get to live in your echo chamber, which is, impotent.
Okay. Maybe. And like, I'll grant that I have seen a significant amount of action from these coming generations, right? I've seen a significant amount of action on certain subjects that, like, does seem to be pointing in a positive direction. But what I'll also say is, like, for instance, Vivzy Pop. She's the head of the Spindle Horse Animations studio that does Has Been, Hotel, and Hell of a Boss. And I see so many threads on such a consistent basis saying, you can't watch this. She culturally appropriated. She ate things on the banned foods list because of the boycott of Israel. She culturally appropriated. I don't give a shit. Use some symbols from hoodoo. Yeah, but she only used parts of the symbols, and it was a character that was fucking part of that culture. It's like this mentality of basically
I'm taking you with me.
Basically entitlement is what I have a problem with. And a significant amount of these people involved in this shit are part of that problem, part of that process, and they aren't involved in the solution, proverbially speaking. So I'm not saying that they're all bad. I'm not saying that they don't do good. Plenty of them are good people who do good. And I know some of those people, and I directly promote them. But I feel like the distribution didn't really change that much. I think it's just people are more ravenous now and faster to, create those dogpiling scenarios. And that's not necessarily a good thing, especially since a lot of these dogpiles that get started are bullshit. Like, I could go...
I don't think anybody's more ravenous than they used to be. I think people are just as ravenous as they have always been. It's just that now they have an easy outlet, that's all.
But is that a good thing? Because the same kinds of mentalities that gave us the Red Scare and the witch hunts and, the burning of Black Wall Street and all these things is just...
we can say it's good or bad, but it's here. We're going to have to deal with this. You don't get to just go, oh no, we don't like this, put that back. Not sorry, this box is open.
Well, right, but the question is,
we're going to deal with this.
But the question is whether or not, because you say that the power structures are going to get uprooted, but
they will, yes.
But that doesn't mean that there won't be new, worse power structures put in their place. So if it's
I didn't say that it would be better. I just said that this is going to fundamentally change how we do business. Well, that's the thing. I think I'm hoping that it becomes an optimistic outlook. I hope that the truth becomes more prevalent, and I hope that it becomes more difficult to maintain the charade. But you can't predict the future, and the Soviets tried really hard, and they had really good ideas and principles, and they absolutely fucked it up. So humans can fuck up anything, and if that conversation is strictly about how we enforce accountability, that's as simple as that. Your population either practices personal responsibility and takes it upon themselves to hold other people accountable for their transgressions, or they create an organization to do it on their behalf that they will have to also hold accountable while holding accountable the people who actually did something wrong. It's just creating extra steps. So the only way society gets a grip on accountability is to do it themselves without creating a state, and we are nowhere near that.
Right, but like, that's the question, because like, you know, when I think
Well, this is going to change how we do accountability. That's what it's going to change. I love going into this, but it will. How they see the enforcement of rules is what's going to change society, and that's what they're doing. I'm telling you, I really think my kids are going to use ridicule on social media like a firebrand. I think it's going to chastise people and change their behavior in society at large. I think it'll be a new tool of accountability. And will it be a good one? Well, fuck, I don't know. Anything can be abused. But from the dynamics that I see from my kids, boy, it looks really good. They are really quick to hold each other on it. The dynamic that really had me thinking about this hard happened about a month ago, I guess. And I do think about it a lot, but this one I keyed on because it was so obvious. So some girl in my daughter's friend circles, said some very rough things, and pointed at the Bible and said that this was okay because, the Bible says this, and now I want you to understand that I live in the Bible Belt here.
Yeah.
So these are a bunch of church-going kids now, and well, they absolutely destroyed this poor little girl. I felt bad for her, but yeah, they made her apologize. Take that shit back. You're going to change the way you see shit. That ain't what God said. It's that's a powerful dynamic when you see shit like that right here in the Bible Belt, man. That's gonna the 10 kids that were actually involved in that conversation aren't the ones that are really going to be changed. It's going to be those 200 kids in that group that watched that conversation go down.
So,
yeah, malt chocolate, please. Hi, love you.
So the general.
See, I'm gonna get my corn syrup.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the general thing, though, is optimism to me is a general outlook of positivity, where it's like it's a projection. It's you think things are probably going to be a certain way. So it like an optimistic outlook is to a certain extent a prediction of the future. It's not like you can do it like, with certitude. It's not like you can do it, guaranteed your outcome is the one that gets like the day in the sun. But like at the same time, my prediction is, and the reason I'm a pessimist is, I think that technologies like this in the hands of the populace as it stands and as it has been created and crafted and indoctrinated and propagandized and etc., I think that's a recipe for fucking disaster. Because like
it can be, yeah.
When I was in school, I was bullied. When I was out of school, I was abused in various ways by various people. And those are the people who were in charge when I was, growing up. And now that people like me have grown up, a significant amount of us have become the kinds of people that those kinds of people raised. And, they'll never claim that. They just want to mock millennials. They want to mock Gen Z. They want to mock people when it's their fault that we're this way. Like, I hate that song, "We Didn't Start the Fire." Go fuck yourself. You were starting plenty of fires.
But I think one generation just hands the torch to the next one. The prevailing perspective is, whatever. Like I was talking about earlier, where the older you get, you adopt more conservative perspectives as you get older during certain stages of your life. The boomers are handing us the torch right now, so now we're going to be the assholes. But in 20 years, we're going to hand the torch to the millennials, and they're going to do dumbass shit too. And that's just how that fucking goes.
Right. But like
I don't think. But I do. As far as optimism goes, I feel very optimistic about the dynamics that I see in my children's generation. Yes, I feel very optimistic about it.
Well, the reason, The reason I'm saying I don't is because I know how that social dynamic works, and I know that it's basically not different now. In fact, you see a whole lot of bullying that doesn't even go addressed because, teachers don't want anything to do with it at all. And so you'll get
Hmm.
situations where kids are like beaten to death. Kids are like committing suicide because everybody in their school now hates them because of something that was sent out yesterday. That wasn't true, but it was certainly enough to get them dragged through the mud enough that their already intolerable lives were less tolerable, or where some of these people will lash out and shoot up their school or some shit like that because they had no personal other recourse. And so when it comes to it, and like, look, I'm not saying like they didn't have another recourse. Obviously, I'm not trying to say that that if
I
you're at the end of the road, shoot up your school. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that in their mind, they had no other recourse because they were treated like
sure.
absolute shit for years. And
Yep.
giving these sorts of people not only the tools to do mass media, but the tools to create reality through artificial intelligence, where these people will be able to create somebody's voice saying something cancelable, or create a whole video of them doing something cancelable with things like Sora. Um, it's fucking terrifying to me, and I don't think that those people will be so quickly dismissed because I was personally attacked by a significant amount of people in Generation Z, and the people who like sort of puppeteered them, who were closer to millennials and things like that. And a significant amount of these people will simply believe something because somebody that they've already trusted said it. And so it doesn't matter that like it might be disproven later, the damage will already have been done. And a lot of these people will march off into the sunset and not get ridiculed. Dan, for instance, didn't get ridiculed into dust until like way later after a significant amount of backstabbing was done, after she proved who she was to her own friends circles. Um, that didn't happen for me when she was lying about me, because most of her audience didn't give a fucking shit. They just wanted to, continue to see more subpar art. And so, like, that was Jocelyn Glaybock marched off into the sunset. Now, like, paid a huge amount of money to do Tim Pool and be a beer marketer for a fucking conservative beer company. And like all of this stuff, I could mention in terms of cancelability, I could mention that there are a significant amount of dudes who have not been fully canceled yet. Even Mr. Beast is currently trying to save face and might get away with it. Logan Paul
No
is
way.
a piece of shit. And he has spent years and years scamming people and just resetting the scam. Elon Musk is a piece of shit and he runs Twitter.
Sure.
So, like, I don't believe that simply having this be a possible mechanism is the saving grace of these people, because I think that fundamentally our social structures, our cultures are still crafted to create this like bottom class bickering, us versus them, truth averse, hostile environment where people coming up in this
Hmm.
environment are trained to quickly treat people like shit. It's the same sort of bullying, it's the same sort of otherizing, it's the same sort of thing that I grew up with, but now it's faster and harder. So victims
Hmm.
of this
It sure is.
have much more to worry about. If they're the actual victim and not the villain, they have much more to worry about. And oftentimes that results in significant harm being done that is irreparable. So I just feel like the optimistic take here about like the information age in the modern respect creating like a better environment, I kind of doubt that's what's going to happen because the culture didn't change first. You give a psycho a gun, and that psycho's probably going to use it for something evil, you know?
You're doing it backwards. You're completely backwards there. Culture does not precede technology. Technology precedes culture. Culture follows technology. You can't put it the other way around. Technology shapes culture
Why?
because it shapes us.
Like, I mean, there were a huge amount of, for instance, enslaving cultures for a significant period of time. So I don't know that that's the case. I don't
That
know. I
how is slavery technology? I'm talking about a technological step that changes the way that we behave. That will fundamentally change society. It always does. That you can't. Culture doesn't make a step and then suddenly shit out a technology that goes with it. It's the other way around. 100% of the time, it never is the. It's never culture first. Culture follows technology. We create things. Those things create. They change the way that we behave, and then those behaviors change our perspectives, and those perspectives will change how we behave in society. So social structure changes because of that. That's how that works. You can't put culture in front of technology. Then dialectic materialism is a non-exister.
So you believe that there's that technology is somehow a spontaneous thing that is discovered.
No, I think that the technologies that we create directly change our society. They cannot help but to.
But like the society that creates the technology created it for a reason, and it's not because.
Not always. That's not. I mean,
So the printing
okay.
press
So
wasn't created for a reason.
yeah, you're right. I take that back. But it has to be built on what came before it. Okay, it's an evolution, just like everything else. Everything
Right.
evolves, even science and technology. You can't shit out the nuclear bomb without all the things that came before it.
Right, but the nuclear bomb was a reflection of the war culture. If they had
Yeah,
decided,
sure, and it fundamentally changed our society.
yeah, but first off, like A, not for the better, and then B,
That's not the point.
and then, well, I mean, it is if we're going optimism versus pessimism, but like B, like it was a reflection of the culture that the nuclear bomb was created before the nuclear generator. It was a reflection of the culture that the warlike people in control of that culture were like, we can create a huge amount of energy. Let's use that to kill people in Japan, rather than we can create a huge amount of energy. Let's end this war and try to use this energy to, further society. Like,
Well, we figured out how to boil water with it to run generators with it before we figured out how to split atoms and make bombs. We knew that we could heat water with nuclear material just by having large amounts of it in close proximity. The problem that we didn't get over until the 1950s was how to control that reaction. But yeah, we were working on trying to make power with it before we were working on trying to kill each other with it.
well, right, but like in terms of like nuclear reactions based on fissile material, because like the boiling water is the
Yeah,
result
well,
of those reactions.
okay, so if that society had dumped as much money into boiling water and powering generators as they did splitting atoms to blow each other up, we'd have made generators before we made bombs.
Right.
But we didn't. And that's still not a cultural thing. That's still culture following technology. The technology's coming first, and then the culture is working with it.
So
The
so the culture didn't like need to exist that prioritized bombs over
culture,
generators.
the technology changed the culture. The culture the technology didn't come first. Or I mean, the culture didn't come first. The technology shapes the culture after it arrives. I don't see it any other way.
But like the technology was created and prioritized for that use because of the culture that already existed that wanted war. That's the reason it made bombs, because it wanted
Yeah,
war.
the technology changed the culture.
But the technology was there after the culture already wanted war. Otherwise they wouldn't have made bombs
And
with
it
it.
changed war permanently, didn't it?
Yeah, but didn't make war go away. I mean, it
That's not my point at all. It
right.
fundamentally changed war.
Right.
Technology changes society, it changes culture, it changes everything.
But the
Every time we have some big technology, it changes us.
but the bomb was created because of the culture of war, not because the
Yes,
bomb
the
was
culture
created and
created
then
the technology, and the technology changed the culture.
Right.
And
So,
that is exactly what dialectic materialism says, isn't it?
but like what I'm saying here is that if that's the case, first off, Kant in chat says technically all are both wrong because technology and culture are symbiotic; they affect and cause each other. But like the
Oh,
general
okay, yeah, I can buy that. Yeah.
the general vibe I'm trying to say is like I do think it's a cycle, and I do think that technology is caused by a culture that demands it. Like that's simple demand side stuff. Like there's a need in tech or a desire, and technology is crafted to better suit that need or desire. So when it
It's
comes
just humans. I don't. Is that cultural?
yeah, that's the culture was warlike. That's why we got warlike materials from that culture. The
Oh,
warlike
I meant the need to create technology, the need to advance technology. I'm not sure that that's a cultural thing.
but the culture decides what like course that technology will take. The culture decides how that technology will be used. The culture,
Then then that guy's right, and it's symbiotic.
right? But and I would never insist otherwise. What I'm saying is that it's a matter of the culture existed to want war, and that's the reason the bomb was created. It's not because the bomb created the warlike culture and that's why we had a culture around the bomb. The culture around the bomb created the bomb to begin with, and then better bombs in the eventual like realization of the nuclear bomb. So the
Well, then
culture
why did we create nuclear, or why did we even work with nuclear material at all in the first place? It wasn't originally for bombs.
Um, I'm pretty sure that they were trying to use it to create like weapons. I'm pretty sure the
I don't
military
think
industrial.
Madame Curie was not trying to create weapons.
Well, Madame Curie discovered the like radioactivity in principle, but like
Hmm.
if I understand correctly, was not responsible for finding out how generation or bombs worked. The actual
No, not
development
at all.
of the
No,
bomb had nothing to do with Madame Curie. So
nope,
when it comes to it, the actual
nope.
development of the bomb was because of a culture that wanted war. It had nothing to do with who like discovered radioactive elements.
But cultures want all kinds of things, not just war, is my point. They want everything. They want a whole plethora of stuff. It's not just war. And when technologies come, they change every aspect of whatever that technology was invented for. What our original conversation was about was the advent of telecommunications and how that technology is fundamentally shaping the behaviors of our children, which is, I mean, I really do see this. And maybe I'm in a microcosm because I'm in such a small community, but I see the effects of it strongly whenever I hear my kids talk about how dynamics in the school work these days and how bullying in a school with only 400 kids in 4 grades at high school is almost non-existent because everybody's afraid of the backlash on social media. But maybe that's just because I'm in this little tiny town. I don't know.
So, but
But
the
yeah,
point
okay,
is like culture isn't just one culture. It's not like there's an omni culture that like every other culture has to be like subordinate to. I'm an anti-war person. My goal in nuclear anything would be to find ways to generate power and make things more peaceful because people would be fighting less over energy. But I'm not the person who made the nuclear bomb. I'm not the teams that made that happen. And those people who made that happen were trying to get arms superiority. It was an arms race.
hmm,
It was a
yeah.
war culture that made the bomb. It was not the bomb that made the war culture. It just made a different sort of war culture once it was made, once it was proven, once the concept was used to kill like hundreds of thousands of Japanese people all at once. So
Yeah, well, like he said, that's symbiotic, though, right?
well, right. But the point is that, like, if we're talking about, like, culture, it's not just one culture. There are plenty of ways that the printing press was used that were liberatory. But there were also propaganda rags. There were also
Sure.
communications between tyrannical governments that got there much faster because of the printing
Hmm.
press. There were so many ways that the printing press was used that were for tyranny. And so when it comes down to it,
Sure.
the culture that creates certain things will use them for certain purposes. And so whether your culture is liberatory or not is like your culture would not be the only culture. And if the like mass majority present culture is creating tyrannical conditions, creating bullying, creating toxic and hostile and evil conditions for the common person, and those people get a hold of something like AI, those people are going to use it for that purpose. The technology will enable their culture. It won't stop their culture.
Well, like I pointed out earlier, anything can be abused. I just don't see the dynamic leaning that way. If, in my mind, the way that I see it, if the control of information could completely stop these social evolutions that technology creates, then we'd still be living under the monarchies of Europe. But it can't. All the hangings and burnings and propaganda in the world is not going to stop people from, evolving. They just don't. It just doesn't.
Maybe. I mean, but maybe, like, the fact is we're dealing with some fundamentally evil people in charge who wouldn't mind seeing the whole thing burned down.
But then okay, so then this system is gone, and there will be another one.
Yeah,
none of us exist. One of the two.
Yeah, on Mars, when Elon Musk jets off to, like, fuck off, like, with all the rich people who made things worse.
Not even a viable thing.
See, the thing is, like, I think, and this is I'm a heavy doomer in this regard. I think that the elites are currently building their escape plan. They know they fucked shit up. They didn't have a problem with it. They were trying to be immortal, and they've got, like, extremely psychotic ways of, like, thinking and acting, and they've created this environment of us versus them so that they can keep us fighting at the bottom and avoiding fighting them entirely. And I
agree with that part, yeah.
And they're going to use these technologies as a way to keep us at each other's throats and point us at the targets that they desire us to attack. And so, like, the general vibe that I get off AI is when they control the fact checks, when they control what's considered the truth, when they control the AI that can generate that fact and that truth, and then they can say that, like, well, this is exactly how it is, and anybody who disagrees needs to be demonetized or censored or pushed off or otherwise, fucking fucked out of their shit. Like, to me, that's the culture we're going to start seeing. We're going to start seeing these people in charge, like, overwhelmingly get their way, because we will be too busy fighting each other, too busy scrapping on social media over things that were wholly fabricated. Like, rage bait is so prevalent. Those people didn't cut the bottoms out of their shoes. They did that to, like, one pair of shoes, and then they made you think that they were doing it to all their others, so that you would be, oh, such a waste of clothing, I disapprove, and, like, it wasn't real. Or, like, so many of these other people, like, there was this channel that was posted in my server, my Discord server, my cult, if anybody wants in. This channel was a couple's family channel, and this couple's family channel was, like, creating these videos of, oh, I'm a poor black woman with this terrible husband, and he's like, look at what happens when I cook him food. His reaction is, oh, I would prefer McDonald's. Well, I just went to McDonald's. Gotcha. And it's like, fucking, but then you go to their channel and they've got videos where they're not like that, and it's considered a comedy channel. But so many people have clicked into those videos on both TikTok and YouTube and wherever else they posted this, that these people are making fucking bank lying to people. And so many people are out there. Like, the reason I found out about this is because somebody posted the red flag guy. And this guy is a guy who does, like, shares of people's content, but interspersed he'll wave, like, a red flag or a green flag, and it'll be like, this person is awesome or this person sucks. Well, this red flag guy bought this hook, line, and sinker, hook, line, and sinker, and he thought this was a real person really abusing his wife, and so did his audience, who were in that person's replies saying, you're a piece of shit, and all this stuff, happens so routinely.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes,
gays,
yes, it does.
and I'm not saying that this guy's on the same level. By the way, this guy's usually got some pretty good content. The green red flag guy, not. But what I could also say is, on a much more sinister note, gays against groomers and libs of TikTok, they will send an absolute army after anybody they go against, and it's usually garbage. It's usually not grooming. It's usually not what they're saying it is, but they've got a whole lot of people on their side who will just believe it and immediately go attack these people. And it happens on such a routine basis. And so I
Yep.
think the elites want this. I think they want us
Yes,
fighting with each
absolutely.
other.
They do. Yeah.
I think they want us destroying each other so that we're not destroying them. And I think
Mhm.
AI is just the latest tool in their toolkit. Hody, by the way, in chat, Hody Johns says,
Hey, Hody.
hey, two people I love. Jason is in the Love First Christians, and I always appreciate his contributions. He also says, hey, it's Rose, probably the Rose. Hi, Rose, because she says, what a coincidence. They're two of my favorites, too. Hody says, let's take something cultural, like food. Technology will be different in different places based on cultural cuisine. Since all technology can be abused in a bad culture, what is the solution to having any innovation right now? Because I like AI, though I definitely see it getting abused often.
Sure.
So,
I think education is absolutely key. And I'm just going to point at the internet here. I think the internet, good or bad, misinformation, information, however you want to see it, the flow is there. People are probably more educated right now than they have been in a long time, I would suppose. An interesting dynamic that I have seen in that just not very long ago. So 8 years ago, I guess it was, my cousin, hardline conservative, voting red and all that shit. Man, you can't even talk about conspiracies around this guy. The other day, he puts up a meme on his timeline about, you better pay your taxes. And the little dude goes, well, why is that? Why is that? To protect me from what? And he's like, to protect you from what I'm going to do to you if you don't pay your taxes. Now, 8 years ago, this guy was hardline red. And now he's talking about how the state is extorting people. That's the education. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about what happens in the classroom to our kids. I'm talking about the general perspective
right.
of the population at large. And this is the education that I'm talking about. There's a there's a perspective shift happening. And yes, I know that there are plenty of people on the extremes that still adhere to the silly shit and are willing to take action about it. I mean, they vote too. So, there's all kinds of crazy shit that goes on. But I still have a lot of confidence in the silent majority. I still feel very strongly that 80% out there that doesn't say a lot is just, they might not be the brightest demographic, but they're not dumb enough to listen to what they know is bullshit. They just don't say it. So I think there's a little bit of a slant there, and the media is very much to blame for this. They only show the 5% on the extreme left and the 5% on the extreme right, and they try to spin these views and pretend that this is the majority, and it's just not. 80% of the people out there just aren't going to go along with the bullshit, and they're waking up. If they weren't, my cousin wouldn't be putting up memes like that. I mean, that is extremely out of character for him. So,
Gotcha.
I think that's what's happening.
So, okay, I think maybe we might be drawing to a close. Two things then, and I'll start with this one. I think that there is, between the two of our positions, like the extreme doomer perspective on my end, where I think we're all literally gonna fucking die in nuclear ash or some similar cataclysmic event because the elites want destruction. We are the carbon they want to reduce. There are too many of us, and we're too inconvenient to their power. So they have to do something about that, and every now and then there's a mass cataclysm event. There's a wiping out of a
True.
significant portion of the population in order to cull. And the elites are also occultists, oftentimes, who support this as their way of, like, bringing
Yeah.
forth their
Yeah.
fucking new cultures. So my
Yeah.
general thing is, I think that that is going to happen, but, like, I think that there's a race between the good people who actually want to solve these problems and the people who don't. The people who profit from these problems and want to see them persist. The elites who want to kill us all and harvest us. Things like that. There are people who, like, are part of the solution, and they're in a race against those people. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who are good, and I'm not saying that there aren't people who want the better, like, future. Like, Dogpack 404 is calling out Mr. Beast right now and being a voice for all the people who, like, didn't get to say anything before because Mr. Beast was the golden god of YouTube. Um, like, and I mean that, like, he was the biggest account on YouTube, probably still is, because, like, he hasn't been fully canceled yet. But um, the general vibe that I think is there are people out there fighting the good fight. How would you personally help them get faster in order to win that race?
Me? I'm doing it. I debate, I talk, and anybody in my real world, not just in social media.
Right.
Obviously, I'm going to do that in social media, but in my real world, I advocate these perspectives on the regular. And 10 years ago, when I first started talking about these radical ideas and stuff, I was met a lot with rebuffments. That's just, people don't want to hear this shit, and it makes them very uncomfortable. But we're at a point right now where people have watched their purchasing power absolutely evaporate before their very eyes, and that slap in the face is really starting to take effect on people. Now that is outside of the scope of what I have talked about earlier with the change in behavior of our children, but it's definitely. I think the internet is definitely playing a part in how the average person is seeing the power structures that we currently live under. I think a stark light is really starting to shine on some shit. People may not sure yet understand what it is. I still, when I talk to people, get a lot of confusion about it. They're very mixed feelings about these things, but the sentiment is definitely there. People are very untrusting of the government at this moment, and that kind of scares me a little bit. For the fact that that may be a play, that could be the psyop. How do you break a nation that's as strong as the United States and so heavily armed population? Undermine their trust in the state, undermine their trust in their own government and military, and you've got a really clean shot at breaking the economy and then breaking the states. So is I mean, that's conspiracy bullshit, but it's logical. I think that there's a fundamental shift happening. It's not just in our kids; it's in the average people's perspective.
So the second thing is, um, it's not just AI. It's not just truth claims that I have a thing with. Although, and I've made this point, like, so many times, like, liberty without truth is impossible, and truth without liberty is useless. That's my general catchphrase in this regard, because if you don't have the ability to, like, use the truth because you have no liberty, then the truth is just, yeah, sure, we can talk about what's true, but if we don't have the ability to
Right.
act on it, or the willingness, or the cultural backbone to do anything about it, then it's fucking useless to tell the truth. And if we have the truth, if we have liberty, um, but no truth, then anybody can just lie us into whatever abuse of power they want. Anybody can just lie us into whatever culture they want,
Yeah.
even if that culture is a culture of domination. And so,
Yep.
like, my whole deal is we need both truth and liberty, or we don't have either. Um, but, like, the general thing is that, because we have been lied into this culture that we have now. We were indoctrinated from like K-12, and now in our adult years we're told by people who buy the kinds of lies that those institutions gave us. Um, we have people in charge and creating the new cultural paradigms for the new indoctrination, and it compounds and cements itself through the generations to the point where we get like mass cultural shifts toward global enslavement. And that is manifest with like we can't buy houses. They're all owned by various banks and firms and shit. We have no money. Like the productivity gap is gigantic, and like inflation kills whatever savings we have in 2 minutes. Um, and like we have no privacy, so we can't build alternatives to a certain degree unless we're willing to take some significant risks, which most people aren't. We have no autonomy because all our stuff is connected to corporate controlled grids, whether it be social media or banking or some Slack channel that you have to log into to do your Zoom meeting for your work so that you can hear about the latest updates pushed through GitHub of the software that you have to use in order to make sure that you can still log into your POS system to do your Home Depot job, or some shit like that. And we have all of this on top of like this new like fake truth paradigm, like oftentimes pioneered and puppeteered by AI, which is monitoring us increasingly. Like Javier Milei is installing a minority report system in Venezuela, or not Venezuela, Argentina right now. Venezuela is another corrupted state, corrupted by the West, but that's a separate issue. The general idea that I want to talk about is like, I think society itself is a self-perpetuating cultural mechanism of the powers that should not be, primarily. And I think that all these mechanisms and the fact that things are trending downward, the purchasing power, you can't even buy the food you need. So it incentivizes people to go along to get along. It incentivizes people to participate in the structure, as it were, because if you rock the boat at all, you might be fired, or let go, or something like that. Your hours might be dramatically reduced, etc., etc. And you might be like sort of edged down into this paradigm of, well, I can't even afford to eat. I can't afford my rent of my room in my house that I share with people because I can't afford a house of my own. I need to knuckle under and do what I need to do in order to, make the system happy, or I won't be able to eat next week, which is more important to me than whatever pet cause somebody might have.
Yeah.
I don't see a good and easy and like ready-made way out, and I don't see a population of people willing to do the rough work necessary to make it. And I'm not even blaming them, because this society is stacked against them. So, like, what I'm asking you, make the best optimistic case for what I just said being bullshit, because if it's not, it's going to take a whole lot more work and energy and everything else than is probably like probable, for the people to turn this thing around.
Well, society evolves, right? So I like to look at historical analogies and then apply them to where I think maybe things may evolve to, based on the most common behaviors that you see after the change. If that makes sense. So
yeah, paradigm shift.
Right. So the first really big one that I can think of in history was like when we adopted the written word and codified law. That really changed civilization as we know it. It gave birth to an entirely different form of power structure, because laws were no longer just whatever this local magistrate said. The laws were the same everywhere because the king said they were, and they were written down, and they were administered by his judiciaries. And it changed the state. It created the state thing. So we codified law. We made a different society. And I think the printing press did basically the same thing. The printing press comes along, the written word becomes common. People start talking about new ideas besides, what they were told to think about from the church and the monarchy. And, start thinking for themselves a little bit because they read some shit and somebody else read some shit and they talked about it, and it changed the world, and we had to change everything because of it. It changed the power structures. The monarchies died. The church is still rolling around trying to hang on. But the modern power structures that were created by that are they're on really shaky ground right now because we've created a new paradigm shift, and that perspective is changing, and it's changing fast. And I just don't think it's going to survive this. I think we're going to see a very different state in the near future. Not when I say near future, I'm talking like a century from now, like 5 more generations.
In perspective, very recent.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's short term in social structure evolution. Every time we have an evolutionary step, a big one like this, these big paradigm shifts, I think it improves the quality of life of people overall. I think it does better for society as an overall. We became freer after the printing press. I'm hoping that based on how things have progressed in the past, that we will become a little freer in our next version of a state. I don't think we're going to be stateless. I think that we would just have maybe a better version of it than what we had before. And maybe in 1,000 years or so, we can maybe evolve to the point of being stateless. I just don't see that happening anywhere in the near future.
So, do you think that this maybe 1,000 years in the future is going to outpace? Do you think we will last that long? Do you think that the people who would be necessary to build that are, because of the present technologies, going to outpace the people who would destroy that sort of effort? Long term enough, do you think that that's what's going to happen? Because of the technological paradigm shifts as you mentioned them.
I think that you will run into the same problem with getting people to destroy the world. That a really good example was the false alarm that Russia had, and I want to say it was in the 1970s. Is that right? Where they were told to launch, and the guy that could have hit the button just wouldn't. He's like, no, this just can't. We just can't fucking do this, man. So, they literally just said, no, I'm just not going to do that, dude. I think you're going to see that. I think if you put your soldiers directly into the line of saying, all right, now get in the barrel, we're going to destroy the world, they're just going to say no. I think that's a really hard hurdle to get your troops to go over, and I really don't see any way for any kind of organization, sans a military, destroying the world. How do you do that?
Well, see, the thing is, I think that there are enough absolutely fucking insane and also in a bad way people at the helm. I think there are, I've said this for over half a decade now. I've been I think that there are too many evil people with their hands over too many big red buttons, and I think that those people are increasing in volume and acceptance, and that the general vibe of the common person is, as long as you're doing something beneficial for me, I will help you get away with what you're doing. Because they'll do.
Yeah. Oh, I think that mentality is dying, though. I don't think our kids have that mentality. I don't think Gen Z, Gen Alpha have that fucking mentality.
Maybe.
I think they are too quick to call each other out on their shit for that mentality to survive. I'm not saying that they don't want to. I'm just saying that they're going to troll each other so fucking hard over it that they just won't be able to anymore.
I mean, maybe, but I also know for a fact that A lot of these people, and from my own personal experience, that a lot of these people are those go along to get alongers. That the ratio to me has not significantly changed yet. I'd like to. I hope it does. I hope to be a
Yes,
part of that solution.
I hope
But
so too. Well, the catalyst is there. The like I said earlier, the perspective is shifting, and I think that we're about to head into a man. I'm telling you, and I've been saying this since we printed that fucking money. I'm telling you that this year coming up, I think 2025, 2026 is gonna be fucking rough, y'all. Like bad. I think it's going to be a slap in the fucking face that people that don't want to do something ain't going to have no fucking choice but to get up and do something. It's going to be time to get out there and till your fucking garden and grow one. You ain't going to have a choice, y'all.
yeah,
You're going to get slapped in the goddamn mouth, and you ain't going to be able to feed your fucking kids because you trusted this fucking state. And I think that slap in the fucking face combined with the perspective shift that we're having is going to be a paradigm shift, something that I just don't know where it's going to go. It scares the shit out of me, to be honest with you.
yeah. Well, I mean, so I guess then, because we're nearing up on 15 minutes to 2 hours, which
Yeah.
is, yeah, that's about how long I like these conversations to go. Like, I want them to be thorough enough that we can actually hit the issues. So like that was not a dig. Um, like and that's the difference between this channel and so many other channels. Is that like this channel is here to actually drill down and solve problems. So like it has to go for a long time. It's not just going to be a fucking half an hour snippet thing. Um, but and also hello, Cecilia just got here. Um, Kant says optimism doesn't require denying the current bad, but simply that even with challenges, the good will occur or overcome. Um, and he also says that main optimism and pessimism depends if you're looking at the stars or the mud. Main thing for me is whether the pessimism or optimism pacifies or gets people to act. Um, so like that's an interesting paradigm on its own. Um, but uh, Kant also says there was also the fact that it seemed weird that to the dude that only a few missiles were launched, part of why he didn't counter-strike. Yeah, yeah. Um, but the general vibe, okay, so I want you to give a mission statement. If like I want you to envision that you are rallying the troops, that you are trying to make an optimistic, um, like the best grounds, the best fertile soil for optimism on a philosophical level, and I want you to give a rousing speech rallying these troops. I want you to tell the next generations, whatever they're called, the thing that you would tell them in order to get them on the side that would actually make the optimistic outcome come true. I've already said enough of my doomer bullshit, so take as much of the remaining, I guess, 13 minutes we got here as you want. Rally your troops. Create the conditions for optimism.
Well, this is going to be short and sweet because it's pretty straightforward, honestly. Um, it's not beyond our grasp to do the right thing. We can do it every day. It's a choice. You know what it is. You see wrong, you're supposed to stop wrong. You're supposed to stand up with other people. It's what we don't do. God, it makes me fucking it makes me want to cry. But it's the most fundamental important thing that we can do in society. It's the whole point is to stand together and protect each other. That's why we get in a society in the first place. It's why we did this, is the application of collective force on behalf of those who cannot defend themselves. Simple as that. So it comes down to accountability. And either we stand together and we hold people accountable for what they've done, or we try to rely on somebody else to do it, and that has never worked. So in the coming years, I would hope to see that people come to the realization that we can't rely on other people. If you want things done, you're going to have to get up and do it yourself. And if you want a good society, you can't pay the state to do it because it ain't going to give it to you. You got to get up and take it. That's what we need. We need action. And I see it in my kids.
So, in a very KMFDM kind of way, we got to destroy what destroys us, and we've got to get up and get going.
Yeah. You ain't never going to eat that corn if you don't plant it.
So, on that front, give people like a good starter kit for what they need to do to create those circumstances.
Whew, man. Read. I can't tell you how important it is to read. Absolutely life-changing. Get out there, read some stuff and you're gonna be really confused by it. Philosophy is difficult. I'm telling you. Go ahead, grab something that catches your eye, find some philosopher, and read him, and then go out there and talk to somebody about it. Don't just sit there and ponder it. Go find you some friends, and y'all have a beer and talk about this shit. This is what changes the world, right there.
And so, let's say you don't have immediate access to a space where people are interested in those sorts of discussions. What would you suggest to foster the proper conditions?
Whew, man, that's a tall order there, Jeremy. I'll tell you what. Now, the problem there is that we are. We do have to operate within the confines of the system that we live in. You cannot be an anarchist in a system. Can't do it; they'll kill you. But you can be an agorist. You can be subversive. You can buy your raw milk on the black market, and your cheese from some Amish dude on the corner, and it's pretty likely that it's going to be a better quality product than what you get at your grocery store. There's a million ways to attack the state, but probably the single most effective way is to participate in the black markets and avoid taxation.
So, but like, in terms of like that culture, you're saying that participation in the market is the best way to get people on board with those ideas?
Participation in the black market.
So, in terms of the black market, how would you say that best helps people create the cultures and get them talking about this sort of thing? Are we also forming a black market of information?
I think it's already happening. Yeah. So, for example, farmers markets, right? They've become very popular here lately, haven't they? Lots of people doing farmers markets and stuff, but there's also a big surge that is not so much talked about within local communities like where I live. That's local and rural. I'm not going to the farmers market. I'm going to get some stuff and bob down the road, and ain't nobody getting no tax money on that. And that happens a lot out here, brother. It's more prevalent now than it's ever been in my lifetime, and I think it's becoming more and more prevalent every day. I know that the only time the man gets a tax dime out of me for my meat is for the processing fee.
Gotcha. So, but like, I think we can both agree that in terms of, for instance, trying to form truth chains, trying to improve the culture on a cultural level, it's not going to help to buy some beef from Bob.
No, it's not. I see what you're saying. You want to propagate the message.
Yeah, the best ways to foster
Jeremy,
that culture.
I'm really not sure how you're going to propagate. Thank you, son. I'm not sure how you're going to push a message like that in this moment of disinformation that we live in. I mean, we are literally in a boiling pot of it right now.
Right.
And that's my optimism. That's my optimism right there. Is that this dynamic of the troll dynamic that I see so prevalent in my children, this brutal, harsh trolling of each other. You better be honest. And I think that it's going to rip a hole in this disinformation campaign that we're currently living under. Not today or tomorrow. It's going to take years, but it's going to rip this away. This is going to have to adapt to the way that my kids see the world, or it can't survive that. It's just not going to. I don't see that dynamic being able to be stopped.
So your prescription for improvement of culture in this regard is to troll people.
That's not my prescription. I think that's what's happening. I think we're going to troll the lies away. You just won't be able to maintain them for very long. The lies will still be there. People are still going to try to lie, manipulate information, and all that shit. It just be really short-lived. You're going to have a very small window to take advantage of any kind of manipulation that you're attempting to do.
Gotcha.
People just won't let it. It won't let it live very long. It just can't. That's one of the problems with the current propaganda machine. They're still trying to run propaganda like they were doing 40 years ago, and it's failing. If it wasn't failing, we'd all be watching Fox and CNN. But everybody is just like, bah! I'm not watching Boomer Vision.
Sure. Although, like, there's enough of that legacy support still in there that if somebody posts one of those links, they'll probably still click it. They'll probably still, like, at least give it a look. Or they'll, have some sort of, like, source that they do trust that has clicked it or given it a look. There's a certain thing in me that believes that as long as these people create chaos, as long as the elites create chaos, they can do ordo ab chaos measures, like, regardless of how much people are willing to troll the bad actors. And that it doesn't matter, like, any of that. Like, what matters is that they created enough chaos that people weren't sure-footed enough to take steps in the right direction. And, like, to me, that's still enough of a threat to be concerned about, to say that we're not headed in a good direction yet. And maybe we will be at some point, but, like, what would be your way of telling people to establish a better paradigm that is more resistant to that?
Oh, man. What society really needs more than anything else, and I think this you're going to think this is ridiculous, but we need a front porch. People need places to congregate and share and talk, and not on social media. I'd like to point out, I think social media is a very powerful tool. I think it's changing our society, yada yada. But there's something very
missing.
Yeah, and it's that personal connection that you get from being in person. I mean, it's this video and communication goes a long way in making me feel somewhat closer to you, because I can see you and see your mannerisms and all of these things. Body language is a big part of how we communicate, which is why the written word is so difficult, and why arguments start so easily online, because we can't see the humor or dismissal or whatever it is that this person is
right,
trying to convey, because we don't get the body language. We don't get any of that shit. It's extremely important, and I think our society misses it greatly. And the only time that we ever really are talking to each other, it seems like, is in some kind of confrontation. We have a problem with each other, and so we interact.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be very little interaction just for the sake of interaction. The common conversation. We're in desperate need of it, and we're in desperate need of it on a large scale.
So, sort of like the great quote from Frank in God Bless America, the movie. What is the point of having a civilization if we are no longer interested in being civilized?
Oh, yeah. That's pretty much it, yeah. So, and I think, it's the internet has divorced us somewhat from the personal interaction that we so crave as humans. And I think that a lot of the result of that is the harshness that we treat each other with whenever we do interact. It's we become less empathetic, and I know my generation is empathetic. Not we have very little empathy. We are the generation of apathy, is what Gen X is. It's I'm sorry, did you just burn my arm or some shit? Whatever, man. I'm gonna go do something else. I mean, that's that's the mentality that you get from Gen X. Who give a fuck? uh, that's not the mentality I see in my kids. They care, and I think they're willing to do shit about it. I see them being active, more active than my generation was about what it is that they want, goal oriented, highly focused. Not all of them, I'm sure, but my kids and their friends are they're gonna build mountains, dude. They're gonna change society.
So your prescription, if I can put a sort of bow on it, build third spaces, actually talk to people, know your neighbors, build communities that are real in the real, so that you can get the truth from people you trust, and like actually actively support those people in the moment, by trying to drill down as quickly as possible to the truth, so that you can avoid the en masse lies that get propagated too quickly. And also,
God damn, you nailed it.
And also try to engage as much as possible with an anti-system economy and culture, so that when it comes down to it, you're dealing with people who also want to escape the system somewhat as much as possible, and you can form those bonds in that social structure with people who are less invested in using whatever chaos may arise as a mechanism for increasing the control of the powers that oughtn't be.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, boy, you really took my rambling bullshit and turned it into a coherent thought. Thank you.
Well, because that's the point of these discussions. I'm not trying to shit on optimists. I'm still a pessimist for a lot of reasons, but I want the actual position and prescription for what to do to create optimism friendly circumstances to be out there. That was the point of this. If people want my negative asshole bullshit, they can I've got videos already. So
I think that I think people want to help each other. It is the most common behavior I see.
Gotcha. All right, well then, parting words. And I will give you the floor, and you can say as much as you need to.
Well, I think I've said a ton. In my parting words, a simple philosophy that I like, keep. I'm really big on, personal responsibility and accountability, but, accountability without empathy is tyranny. So lead with your heart.
All right. And with that being said, primarily, try to hold each other to as much of this accountability as possible without avoiding your heart, because if we don't get that accountability in here fast and faster than they're running, we will never smash the fucking state.
Hoorah. Yeah, fucking A. Well, I guess that's it for us, ain't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy my poison milkshake, and you folks have a good evening.
Be well, all.
Thank you for having me.
Take
care,
you.
Jeremy.